what does this internal control mean? Okay, what does this internal control mean? Now what happens is, you try to determine some steps of doing the work in an organization, okay, in order to achieve the objectives. Now what could happen, these steps will definitely help you to achieve the objectives, no doubt. So you try to perform those steps, but there could be some factors which are apart from these steps. Okay, you don't perform these steps well, that is going to stop you from achieving the objectives. But there are some other factors as well which are coming to fight against you in order to stop you from achieving those steps, if you're understanding. So you definitely are going in the right direction, you are following those steps, no doubt. But even if you're not following the steps properly, that would result in not achieving the objectives. That is a different thing. But there are some other factors which would be trying to come and which will be trying to attack you to drive you away from your objectives. So if you apply internal controls properly, you would be able to achieve the organizational objectives, if you're understanding. As in, there would be the obstacles which would be there would be automatically reduced because you have applied the control in order to take away those obstacles or the risks, if you understand. So if you apply internal control, it means that you are going to achieve your organizational objectives, definitely, because you are removing or eradicating those risks which are there. So those objectives would be achieved. So this point says that you would be able to achieve your organizational objectives in all the aspects, basically. So it could be in terms of, okay, if you have applied controls everywhere, it could be in terms of operations. That means what? You would be able to achieve operational efficiency and effectiveness, if you're understanding. Next, second is something, if you have heard of something known as, finance related information, or finance is something which is considered to be the most important module of an organization in case of ERP is concerned, or financial module, or finance related information or finance related work is something which happens in all the organization, if you're understanding financial accounting. So if you apply the control properly, there would be, you could rely, or there would be something known as reliable financial reporting, if you're understanding. So something which could be relied on, something which would be accurate, something which would be according to what is required, according to your financial performance matters a lot, if you're understanding. So each and every module, we have seen this in ERP, each and every module directly or indirectly affects the financial module, if you're understanding, because financial module is considered to be the most important core module of any organization. So if you apply the control properly, the controls would mean, applied properly would mean what? Yes, you would be able to achieve your objectives in case of operations as well, in case of finance as well, in case of compliance as well, if you're understanding. Okay, compliance with laws and regulations, if you understand. So laws and regulation is something which are there, which are imposed on the organizations so that they follow those particular laws or regulations, if you're understanding. So how could you make sure that these things would be followed properly? By taking appropriate steps in order to avoid something which shouldn't happen, in order to make sure that the wrong things do not happen. Like for example, when you're driving a bike, applying a helmet as well is a control, if you're understanding, in order to prevent yourself if you get hit with an accident, if you're understanding. So that is a control which is applied. Similarly, in case of organizations as well, you would be able to see that in case of organizations, people are not allowed to go on to internet or social networking sites, if you're understanding. So that is again a kind of control. People are forced to change their password every 30 days, no matter if it is an employee or no matter if it is an internet banking customer. Every 30 to 45 days you would be forced, your password would get expired, if you understand. So these are the controls. Indirectly they prevent your organization from risks, okay, if you're understanding. So after a particular amount of time of inactiveness, you would be able to see session timeout or user timeout, okay, or session logout. So these are the terms which are used, if you're understanding. So these are some controls which are applied in order to make sure that the risks are reduced to a great extent. So these could be the risks, the encryption, the passwords, okay, the OTP or the two-factor authentication, if you remember, or if you would have definitely used. So these are all the controls which are applied in order to make sure that these three things are achieved, if you're understanding. So internal control says that I would, if applied properly, I would be helping you to achieve your objectives. Now internal control, these things would differ from your organization to organization. It is not necessary that your organization would be having the same kind of control in my organization. My organization may be manual, your may be automated, if you're understanding. So internal control is applicable each and everywhere, if you're understanding. So like, you know, you check the cash at the end of the day with the amount of receipts which is there. It is also a kind of control which you are doing, if you're understanding. So that is something which control could be there at every place in order to make sure that, you know, things are performed in a proper manner with the aim of achieving the objectives. So objectives would be achieved if you apply internal control properly in operations as well, in case of finance as well, in case of compliance as well. So if you are able to achieve these things, definitely you are protecting yourself from all the kinds of risks, if you're understanding. So these are the things which we would be achieving when we go for something known as internal control, or when we apply these three things, 1, 2 and 3 would be achieved if we go for the internal controls in a proper manner. Now in order for an e-commerce organization, our syllabus says that there are various participants who are there in case of e-commerce, if you're understanding. So all these participants should be educated and should be aware of the risks which could be there in e-commerce environment. So if you are understanding what I'm trying to say, you as a responsibility, as an e-commerce organization's responsibility, you will have to determine who all are the entities who participate in the transaction and what could be their responsibility, if you're understanding. In order to, because each and everyone will have to take the responsibility of, or you will have to assign the responsibilities to each and everyone in order to make sure that, you know, the risks are reduced. So there are so many entities, you will have to take care of each and everyone, because one wrong thing out of these 10 entities, suppose there are 10 entities, one wrong thing happened. Suppose there are entities like there would be users, there would be website people, there would be transport people. Suppose the delivery time is something which has taken 1 day more than the time given to the customer. So each and every effort would be a loss, if you're understanding. So each and every person should take it as a prime responsibility of making sure that they follow what has been told, so that it doesn't affect the entire industry or the entire organization. One wrong or one thing which is not done in a proper way will be affecting the each and every effort which has been taken. So it would be responsibility of each and every entity in that entire chain to take a proper responsibility and manage the things, if you're understanding. So internal controls, like we understood, was something which would be helping us to achieve the objectives if it is applied properly in terms of operations, where you can be effective and efficient, in terms of reliable financial reporting, in terms of compliance, where you could follow the laws and regulations in a proper manner if your controls are applied properly. So as I told you, our syllabus says that there are many entities which are involved, and all the people or all the persons or all the entities should be explained, should be aware, should be taking appropriate steps in order to prevent the risk. So who all these persons are? So if I have to just write the names according to the book, these people or these entities are as follows. First is something which is known as users. Okay. Second is something which is known as sellers. Third is something which could be government. Fourth could be something known as network service provider. Fifth could be something known as technology service provider. Sixth is something which is known as payment gateway, if you're understanding. So first one is something which is known as user. Okay, now what happens is, as an e-commerce organization, as I told you, it is your responsibility as a seller or as an e-commerce organization that you need to prove that the user is genuine. Okay, you collect various information about the users, about their ID proofs, their address details, address proof, their OTPs, etc., their email addresses. So all this information is purposely taken. Otherwise it would have just been that you give me your address, I ship the product to you, if you're understanding. That could also serve the purpose, if you're understanding. Just give me the address and that is all. No need to create the user ID and password, just address and done. So that could be a simplified but not a controllable approach, if you're understanding. So users should be proved that it is your responsibility to prove that they are genuine. Okay, so the genuineness would be proved by taking the appropriate information, making sure that those are not hacked accounts, or those are not the accounts of the people who are not actually customers, who are just, you know, robots, or are just there for the sake of being there, not to purchase but just to give an order and, you know, waste the resources of the organization. So your responsibility would be to prove that the users are genuine, if you're understanding. So genuine users should only come to the website in order to purchase the thing. You won't entertain a robber in the shop as well, if you're understanding. So you will have appropriate controls installed in order to make sure that, you know, if such people come, then I would be having the security guards, or I would be having the alarm systems, etc., who would be just kicking them out of the organization. Likewise, the genuineness should be proved online as well. So genuineness is something which is required so that you could continue your operations in a proper way. Otherwise, your efficiency or effectiveness of the operations may get reduced. Second is sellers, if you're paying attention. Now, what is a seller's responsibility? As a seller's general responsibility is to make sure that you be updated. Okay, since this is a dynamic market, things change regularly, and that change is like the beauty of e-commerce. The more you adopt the changing environment in a proper manner, the more you would be getting the customers, if you're understanding. The more analysis you do, the more targeted marketing you do, the more targeted customers, or the more retargeting you do properly, the more the customers would be attracted towards you only, if you're understanding, where they would be continuously waiting, or they would be continuously aware that yes, now something new would be happening, so let us wait for something new. Like in case of lucky draw, people usually wait to get the number, basically. So likewise, people would also be waiting to understand how I've purchased this, now let me check what the organization gives me as an offer, if you're understanding. So seller's responsibility would be to make sure that each and everything is updated regularly in a proper time format, so that things do not become, it is very easy, the things getting outdated is very easy. Things get outdated in a very short duration in case of e-commerce, because it is a dynamic market. Your offer, which is an offer today, may not be a very good offer after a week, if you're understanding. It's something which would have become like outdated, and people would be like, you know, this is something which we have better offers in the other organization. Why to wait, or why to you know, take such offers, basically, because other organization is providing far more better things than this. So you will have to be updated, and what you will have to be update, basically, make sure that you update your product catalog regularly, okay, with the new things, with the something which has been invented. Make sure that you update the prices of these catalogs or the products regularly, so that customers don't feel that it is something which is, you know, expensive, or something which is not updated, and it is available at a inexpensive rate on other websites. So product catalog, price catalog, okay, discounts and promotional offers, if you understand. This is something which is the most important thing. This is the beauty of e-commerce again. Discount and where the people should be, once a customer comes, it is your responsibility to keep an eye on this module, to take care of this module as much as possible, because this market is all about getting the customer again and again. You spend a huge amount in getting it for the first time. Later, it is your responsibility that much amount, the amount which is spent initially in order to get the customer is known as cost of customer acquisition, basically, where, just for their information, where the major organizations, if I just have to give you a brief idea, major bigger e-commerce companies spend like, you know, an approximate amount of 8,500 rupees in order to get one customer. And how much price does this customer, or how much this customer spends on its first product is just 8.5 rupees on an average, if you're understanding. So 8,500 spent, 8.5 rupees achieved. So are you understanding? If you think of just getting the customer for the first time and that is all, then you know you will have to close it down immediately. So it is about remarketing, retargeting. This 8,500 won't be occurring again, but this 8.5 would be, you know, developed or taken in such a way that you are able to achieve profits of the customer which has been acquired by incurring 8,500 as a cost of it. So you'll have to update the discount and promotional offers schemes regularly, so that the customers, you are able to achieve that cost of customer acquisition, and then you are able to achieve the profit as well, if you understand. So product catalog, price catalog, discounts and promotional offers, if you're understanding. Then product returns. Okay, your responsibility again, something known as product returns. These things should also be taken care of, where this is an important thing. You assure a customer product return should be, what happens is, I should be happy about a good customer, basically, but good customer would give you happiness, bad customer would give you experience, if you're understanding. So the bad customers is something which is the most important lessons for an organization, no matter it is an e-commerce, no matter it is not an e-commerce, but the most important lessons would be learned out of the customers who are bad. And that is something where it depends how well you take that learning experience and you do not repeat it again, if you understand. So product returns is something which should be taken proper care of, because this is something that shouldn't happen again. You have an opportunity now, make sure that you do not make the customer dissatisfied again by getting into something where he doesn't want to come to your organization again. So product return is something which could be the fourth one. And last is accounting for cash received, through cash on delivery mode, if you understand. So this is something which would be your responsibility, major responsibility. If you do not take care of these 5 things, basically your operations would be in danger. Okay, so if you do not take care of this, basically your finance would be in danger. No reliable financial reporting. If you do not take care of this, your effectiveness would be in danger. Okay, if you do not update this, your operational efficiency, effectiveness would be again in danger, if you understand. So these are the responsibility of a seller, to make sure that you update, be aware of the things which are happening in these 5 departments, and make sure that you are taking care of it properly. If you take care of it properly, indirectly you are taking care of the entire e-commerce website or entire e-commerce organization. That is what it is trying to say, that as a responsibility, as a control, you will have to have a proper check on all these 5 things, and things would be working in your way, if you're understanding. The first one is something which is known as users, genuinity has to be proved. Second is something which is known as sellers, and it is a responsibility to make sure that things are updated related to product, price, discounts, returns, and then accounting for COD, if you're understanding. Next is something which is known as government. Now government's responsibility in case of e-commerce organizations is the controls which it would be applying, so that the risks don't come up. The risks which it has to defeat, or the controls which it could apply, is like tax accounting of all the transactions which has taken place. So it is a responsibility of the government to make sure that everything is accounted properly, so that appropriate tax is being charged and each and every transaction is noted in the books of accounts, if you understand. So one would be the tax accounting of all the transactions through e-commerce organization. Okay, if you understand. Second is something where government is also have to make sure that there shouldn't be any illegal products which are being sold online. For example, narcotics etc., drugs etc. shouldn't be stored, or the medicines which have alcohol or drugs product as an ingredient inside them should be taken care that these things shouldn't happen through e-commerce. Basically, illegal products shouldn't be stored, shouldn't be available through these websites. They should be sold through these websites. You might have heard that recently there has been a ban on all the websites who are trying to sell medicines through e-commerce organizations or e-commerce websites. So right now, if you are into selling of the medicines through e-commerce, basically you are not allowed, your organization won't be allowed to sell a single medicine online, if you're understanding, because of the increasing cases of selling some medicines which are not considered to be sellable easily without prescription, if you're understanding. So no matter they ask the prescription, but there has been a ban on the websites who try to sell medicines. So medicines cannot be sold online. Okay, so that is something which is a control which has been applied by the government to stop this, if you understand. So tax, accounting and narcotics would be something in order to make sure that no illegal products are sold online. Fourth is something which is known as network service provider. Fifth is something which is known as technology service provider. Now network service provider, it tries to say that network, okay, network means what? It could be an internet, if you're understanding. It could be something which would be taking the data from the user till the website. So this could be the path of the network, if you're understanding. So as a network service provider, my responsibility is to make sure that this network is available all the time. If it is not available, then it would be a loss to the business. So, and the not availability, it is also known as downtime. Downtime means what? The network is down. So it shouldn't be down at all. Okay, it shouldn't be down at all in order to make sure that the customer are able to reach, because this would be a major reason why people may not go towards that particular website, because the network is not available. So you cannot do anything even if the website is up and running properly. The path is not available, if you're understanding. So what happens is, if you think like, these websites are stored in a particular data center, if you're understanding. So the data center is something which is a place. I'll just show you something if you are paying attention and if you are interested. Data. Okay, I'll just show you a video. Now this is like a data center of Facebook, if you're understanding, where things are stored in huge racks. Okay, this person is trying to tell us that whenever you type facebook.com, the request comes over here in US, California. I'm just giving you an idea. These are the servers basically. They have huge amount of power generators. You would be able to see the power generators, which would make sure that the power doesn't go down. It is up and running every second. Okay, then we have something which is related to your computer. Your computer would be cooled by something known as a small fan basically, but they have huge amount of air conditioners which make sure that the data center has servers. Now the servers would be required to be maintained at a particular temperature. So it may happen that if you do not maintain a particular temperature, they may burn out, if you're understanding. So it is their responsibility to make sure that the temperature is maintained. So they have these huge heat sinks or huge air conditioners which try to maintain the temperature of the servers basically. So if you're understanding, all these things need to be done at the back in order to make sure that they do not get burned out. Okay, so this is related to Facebook data center. Each and every organization maintain their data center in the similar manner. So why I'm trying to show you this is because suppose a question arises in our mind that can we have our own website, or can we have our own data center at our home, or can we host our own website basically. So what you will require, suppose you think that I would be creating my own server and I would be storing it and people would be accessing throughout the world and through my home basically. Now what it requires basically, suppose can you in India, can you give an assurity that yes, 24/7 power would be available no matter what happens? This is something which is an important thing, which may, downtime of it or the power going and customers would be gone. Secondly, can you assure that there would be 24/7 internet connection available? A single second it won't happen that the internet is not available. Can you assure that? So these are the things which would make sure that your things are properly running and customers are continuously coming and not getting distracted, or the risk is not there of customers going away because these things are not working properly. No matter your products are genuine, your website has good content, if the seller is updating everything properly, but the technical aspects is something which also you need to maintain, if you're understanding. That is the reason why people go for data centers or provide it to a third party basically, like GoDaddy etc., who have all the equipments in place. No matter what happens, they guarantee that we won't give you a downtime of a single second, if you're understanding. So making sure that these things are available, you cannot have it at your home, you cannot make a website, and things are not that easy, things won't be feasible, if you're understanding. You will have to spend huge amounts, and that is not something which could be done as an initial e-commerce startup, if you're understanding. So network service provider responsibility would be to make sure that the internet is working, or the network is working, okay, the path is working properly, no downtime. And technology service provider says, apart from NSP, whatever remains, is like, network service provider minus all the service providers. Okay, or it could be like service provider minus network service provider is equal to something known as TSP, if you understand. So all the things which remain, once we remove the network service provider, all the other things like the backends basically, we saw the servers, the websites basically, if you go for cloud, the cloud could be there, as in the third party you are maintaining it. So apart from network, the things which you saw in a data center, making sure that they also work in a proper manner is the responsibility of technology service provider. So network service provider is the path through which the data would be traveling. Technology are the things apart from network service provider, if you are paying attention. So these would be the responsibility of a technology service provider to maintain each and everything apart from network. And if these things are not maintained properly, again, a single thing not proper, the customer would be going away in a flash, if you understand. So you'll have to take very proper critical care of these things. Okay, so user is something which would be an entity. Second is something which is known as seller. Third is something which is known as government, where two things they would be taking care of. Then we have network service provider, technology service provider. Okay, like we saw the data center. Last is something which is known as payment gateway. Everything should be Payment is something which is the most confidential aspect of a person basically. He may, if we look at the priority of a product and if we look at the payment gateway, it is, payment gateway is something where a person is surrendering each and every important, the most confidential thing of his entire life to you, if you're understanding. So, are you understanding? As in, I'm trying to say that the product is a secondary thing. You take a product of 2,000, 5,000 rupees, that is not a big deal. You're selling, if you're selling a product. That product, crashes. That product is something which results in a loss. That is something which won't affect much as compared to if the passwords and everything is lost. That can affect the entire lifetime of a customer. Hence, the payment gateway should be proper. It means what? That everything should be under control, secured, efficient, effective. Everything should be as per the guidelines of the various laws, so that the payment or the payment details do not go anywhere else with proper control. There should be foolproof, if you're understanding. So there are three words which you would remember in case of payment gateway. Efficient. He may suffer for his entire lifetime. That is what I'm trying to tell you. Efficient, effective, Effective is the word, and next is something which is known as foolproof. You need to remember these words. So these are the entities, these 6 entities you need to write in case of controls, who would your responsibility would be to take a proper care of these 6 things, if you're understanding. So from the controls point of view, we have not completed the answer yet, but this is like these are like the 6 entities which you need to remember from the controls point of view. 1 2 3 4 6 A B C D E F G D E F. Okay, okay, there are 7 actually. So payment gateway, and this could be like the 7th one. The 6th one is something which is not difficult. Okay, not difficult, but you need to remember. I'll tell you a technique through which you would be remembering the 7 things. Okay, I didn't make the use of the technique. Logistics service provider is the 6th one, if you are paying attention. Logistics service provider is the 6th one. So logistics, it means transportation. If it is not proper, if the delivery is not proper, if it is not on time, if it is late, then again it would be affecting. Even if you have applied all the controls for these 6 things, and if the 7th thing is like missing, it would be like, it doesn't give a good impression. It could be thought that you say something else, you do not fulfill your the things which you have told, basically. So that is something which would be resulting in a distrust or dishonest organization, if you're understanding. So you do not fulfill something which is guaranteed. So logistic service provider is something whose responsibility to make sure that the products are delivered on time. If you're on timely deliveries is important as a control. So all these 7, okay. Government provided. Now there is an organization named L&T. It's USP. I hope you know unique selling proposition, but we don't need to get into that. Government is the first one, could be government. Second could be something logistics service provider, network service provider, technology service provider, user, seller, payment gateway, if you're understanding. So this is the way in which you could remember the 7 points. If we have to go according to the technique government, okay, then we have something known as logistics service provider, network service provider, technology service provider, user, seller, and payment gateway, if you are paying attention. So these would be the 7 points where control should be, these 7 entities should perform their duties well, so that things are under control. And even if a single one doesn't perform it properly, each and everything or the entire organization would be affected, if you're understanding. So these are the 7 points which you need to understand for controls, if you are paying attention. Internal control was the first point, where controls should be applied in order to make sure that you achieve your objectives. Definitely, if these 7 work properly, you will be able to achieve your objectives in terms of operations, in terms of financial reporting, in terms of compliance as well, if you're understanding. So you would be lawful, you would be financially safe, you would be operationally perfect as well, if you're understanding, if these 7 things perform properly. So the first point was internal control, if you are paying attention. Second was these 7 entities. We are into the topic controls, if you understand. So in controls, the first thing was the definition of internal control. Okay, the second thing was something known as the 7 participants, or the 7 persons, or the 7 entities, if you're understanding. Okay, 7 entities. So this is something which you are seeing in control so far. Now our syllabus again gives another heading which is known as, if you could give it as heading number 1, it would be continued after these 7 points: educating the participants about the nature of risks, if you're understanding. Now, each and every participant should be educated about the nature of risk, if you understand. So who could be that participant? That participant could be like user, that participant could be employee, that participant could be some service provider, etc. So your responsibility as an organization that you should explain about each and every type of risk which could be there if you are doing any kind of transaction. Okay, if you're understanding. So your responsibility as an organization is to decide how you are going to educate the people. Okay, like if you go to a railway station, there they try to educate the customer by the various machines where you try to listen that you shouldn't catch a train, or you shouldn't catch a train which has already started running, or you shouldn't jump out of the train which is not stopped, or something like that. You should carry a platform ticket, okay, etc. These things are like you should wear a helmet, you should not break the signal, you should not break the speed limit. So these are the various mechanisms. Or on the front page of the internet banking, you see do's and don'ts, do not share OTP, etc. So these are like the programs which have been developed by the organizations in order to communicate. You will have to decide what could be, who would be the participants, okay, how would you communicate, how many programs should be conducted, okay, and which could be the best way of communicating the right information to the people, if you're understanding. So educating the participants about the nature of risk is an important point, where your responsibility as an organization would be to determine who would be the participants of such program. Okay, and if you are deciding what the program is, so you will have to decide what would be the nature of what type it is. It could be an audio content, video content, a visual content, and how many times, where it would be displayed, nature and frequency of such programs, if you are understanding. So how, where, which could be the best place to educate the customer about the things, if you understand. That is something could be achieved. This could be achieved by some kind of research as well, that this is where the people usually, these type of people come. So likewise we can have such kind of information on ATM machines, on net banking, something which is printed on their passbook, etc. Something which you could decide and do some as a measure of control, if you're understanding. Like like you have do's and don'ts on the websites, basically, okay, on the internet banking websites, okay, or you have security policy, privacy policy on e-commerce websites, if you understand. You can read those and you could get the information of how the security is provided, how privacy is provided, what is expected. You should change your password regularly. It should not be something which is simple, something which is like it should be a combination of various characters, etc. This is something where people should be made aware that what should be done, that is there, but why it should be done, that is also should be there, because you should know that if you keep it easy, it could be easily grasped and things could be could be hacked easily, for instance. So educating the participants is a must about each and everything, for understanding. The social programs also which you see, like you go to theaters, you are able to see something which is related to non-smoking, if you understand. So people explain what happened to the person who was involved in such an act, and what could happen, the tar and everything which gets collected in the chest. They try to show you why as well. So educate, that could be that they had decided can be the best place, because no matter, you will have to see the advertisement. If you have come inside the theater, you won't be going out, or you cannot get just bounce off it, or you can just you are aware, you at least see it, if you're understanding. Even if you stop or don't stop doing it, but you become aware of that it is wrong, or something which could be the healthy way of communicating or educating the participants. So it is your responsibility how, where, who would be the participants whom you can educate in a proper manner, if you're understanding. So in rural areas, there could be various programs of awareness which could be conducted, where people could go from home to home, like the polio dose, everything. These are the ways in which people are awareness. You'll have to decide how to spend in the most effective way, because we are creating in order to create the awareness. So first point is educating the participants about the nature of risk. Second is like communicating. Now this is about e-commerce, basically. So communicating the customers about the policies, customers about the organizational policies, if you are paying attention. Now our syllabus says that from the e-commerce's point of view, there are 4 policies which the customer has the right to be aware of. These 4 policies are, one could be something known as refund policy. Okay, just try to listen to the name and you would be aware that, or you would automatically get to know or get to understand that yes, these should be something which the customer has the right to know. Refund policy. Second is information security policy. Third is privacy policy. And fourth is shipping and billing policy, if you're understanding. Now, refund, information security, privacy, shipping and billing. Now the first one, if you're understanding, refund policy. Customers should be very well made aware of the things which would be refunded, which would not be refunded, which could be replaced, which could not be replaced. If you go on to something known as Amazon's website, amazon.in or amazon.com, you would be able to see a tab which is known as help. Under that you would be able to see the refund policy of the organization, where it tries to provide you details about all the products. Like there are sections made. One could be related to books, one could be related to mobile phones, one could be related to food items, etc. When you click on appropriate option, you would be able to see the refund or return policy of those appropriate products. Like it says that the food products won't be replaced, won't be returned, if you're understanding. The hair conditioners, the shampoos won't be returned, won't be replaced. The mobile phones or the gadgets or the electronic items can be replaced or returned. There could be replaced option, there could be refund option, etc. As in, some may not have the refund option as well. So it should be just clear to the people that this is the policy which is going to happen. You read the policy first and then you go for the purchase, if you're understanding. There may be some, so for some electronic gadgets it is written that it will take 10 days for the replacement or refund, but we would be sending a technician at your place and he would be checking whether it is actually damaged, and he can take the product to the nearest store where he could just check it, nearest service center of that particular organization, and he could just check it whether it is proper or not. So things are given in detail over there. So it should be, its customer should be very well made aware of these things, like a refund policy. You don't need to write anything. It should be just, over here you just need to write that there should be a link on the website and customers should be able to read it easily. Information security policy, here customer should be made aware of your information, your credit card information, your passwords, your confidential information is secured. How is it secure? Organization can say that we are using something known as HTTPS, where S is like secure socket layer or security, where everything is encrypted. Whatever is sent is in encrypted format. You could go and click on the lock which is there on Gmail or any e-commerce website. You can click on that lock basically, and you would be able to get the information of the encryption algorithms used and how security is being provided. So it is again a responsibility of the customer, or the right of the customer, to know how his information is being used or how secured his information is from the outsiders, okay, from the hackers, from the intruders, from the malicious activity people. Okay, privacy policy, again the customer should be provided with a link on a website where they could read the privacy policy, where the organization could dictate how they are using the customer's private information, where the information generally is that your information which is collected about the products which you are interested in is used just to customize your experience, so that you get to see what you like the most on the website rather than the million products which you serve, if you're understanding. So that is something which is the responsibility of the organization to use the data in just for improving your experience, and we do not provide this data to any other organization, etc. It's something which should be easily communicated to the customer with the links on the website itself, understanding. Last is something which is known as shipping and billing. Okay, the bill is something which the customer should be aware. He should be able to see it. He should be able to determine what the price is, how much tax, etc. has been deducted, and when it would be shipped, when it would be delivered, what time it would be reaching to the customer's hand. Is something which is definitely made aware on the first day itself. On the day where you have, before purchasing, you are aware that it would be delivered in that much amount of time, and this would be the amount which you should be paying. So these are like the 4 RIPs. Okay, so not a very good word though, but it is helping us to remember the 4 policies which the customer should be aware before going or while purchasing the thing. So it is a responsibility, my responsibility as a seller, to make aware of the refund, whether he would be getting or not, of the security of the confidential information he is exchanging, of his data which is collected, his privacy, and next when it would be shipped. So we were into the controls related to e-commerce. Okay, if you remember the things which are there on the screen as well, you need to remember these exactly the way they are, so that you are able to write it in the exam. Simple, but again the content is not very small. It is like, a lot of points. Make sure that you complete the my summary regularly, otherwise you know it otherwise. So controls is something which we saw, where initially we saw the definition of something known as internal control, which would be helping us basically in order to achieve the objectives in terms of operations, finance, as well as compliance. If you remember, we also saw the 7 entities which should be taking care of each and everything, or of each and every work basically of their respective work, so that things happen in a proper manner, things happen in a controlled manner. So 7 entities, if you remember the name, which was like government, L&T, USP, if you remember. So government was one, logistics service provider, network service provider, technology service provider, user. Okay, government, L&T, USP, user, then we have seller, then we have payment gateway, if you remember. So these are like the 7 points which you need to remember. Appropriate points, like seller had something known as price catalog, product catalog, discount and promotional schemes, accounting of goods, or the cash accounting of the cash on delivery. Then we also had something known as product returns. So basically these were the things which you need to remember as the 7 participants basically, who need to make sure that things happen in a proper manner. Next was educating. Next heading was, after these 7, it's divided in such a way: control, internal control, definition, then these 7 points, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, S, or 1 to 7 you can write. Then next heading itself comes in control as educating the participants about the nature of risks, where you would be telling them, dictating them, making them understand what risks could be there, could be involved, and then you could educate them, basically making them aware. So you will have to decide what could be the way in which you would be doing it, the nature and frequency of program, as well as who would be the participants, like it is there on websites about do's and don'ts while using the internet banking, or the passwords, or the credit cards, debit cards, like wearing a helmet, making them aware basically what could happen if you do not follow these things. So not only what you have to do, but also why you should do, is like something which you would be making aware. Then next was making aware of the customers with the policies of your organizational policies, basically related to e-commerce. There would be 4 policies: refund policies, RIPs, refund policies, information security policy, again how your information would be secured while it is transferred from one place to another, or where it is stored basically in encrypted format. P is like privacy policy, if you remember, and S is something which is related to shipping and billing. So okay, so it means that these should be something which should be communicated to the people, so that they are aware of your processes, and they are secured as well, that the things are happening in a proper manner. So these are the things which we have seen so far. So if we just try to conclude what we have seen, controls we saw. In controls we saw the first thing was internal control definition. Okay, you need to remember this as you need to understand what all things you need to write if you're understanding. It is not about understanding, it is all about how you'll have to arrange the answer as well. Second would be the 7 points which you are understanding, which you understood: the user, L&T, and government, L&T, and USP, if you remember. Then we have something known as educating the participants. Okay, then we had something known as the 4 policies, if you remember. Now the next thing which comes over here, that the e-commerce organization should be aware, okay, should be aware or ensuring compliance. This is something which is given with industry body standards, if you're paying attention. So compliance is something which is like being lawful. Now whatever the standards have been laid down by the regulatory bodies, it is your responsibility to follow them, like including the GST, or RBI says, like RBI has made it mandatory that all the transactions will definitely have an OTP now, if you're understanding. So RBI keeps on giving guidelines in order for the organization to be working in a controlled manner related to security, related to compliance. So your responsibility would be to follow these standards which have been laid down by various organizations. So the organization should follow the standards which has been laid down by various industry bodies or various regulatory bodies. Your responsibility would be as an industry to follow those standards which has been laid down by the regulatory bodies. So this is a general point, okay, which doesn't have, it's just that you should ensure compliance according to something which is there. That means if you have to file that kind of report, you'll have to file that audit report. If you need to provide any kind of financial statement, you need to provide as per the body what it says. If you need to file the GST return, you need to file the GST returns, if you understand. So just following what it says is making sure that you are being lawful basically. And last point is, okay, last point is related to protecting your website, basically e-commerce business from intrusion, if you are paying attention. Intrusion. Now what is intrusion? Intrusion means something which is bad, something which is malicious. Now malicious means what? Something which is harmful. Okay, something which is done in order to harm your organization should be protected. Any harmful activity basically. Now what these harmful activities could be, or who these harmful people or the entities could be who are there to harm your organization, something which is simple. Now first could be something known as hackers. Okay, hackers. Then you have something known as second one would be HRVP. We have V as R is something which is known as regular. One is hacker, second is something which is known as regular software updates. Okay, we'll talk about it. I'll just write the names. Hackers, HRVP. We have viruses. Okay, HRVP. We have passwords. HRVP is sensitive information, passwords, and fifth one, last one is like sensitive data. Now the content is easy, just to remember for the last, this is the last point in case of controls in case of e-commerce, protecting your e-commerce business from intrusion. Here you need to remember the HR asked VP is like, you know, vice principal or something like that. HR asked VP for sensitive data, if you're understanding. So this is something through which you would be remembering these 5 points. So hackers, where H stands for something known as hackers. Now it is your responsibility to know how hackers hack the thing, or what could be easily hackable, what could be easily vulnerable. Okay, so you will have to apply controls in such a way that even that would make sure that the hackers, the tools which they are using, they are not able to beat you, if you're understanding. So you should have such kind of controls, like I told you in the last session, that one-way hash algorithm is used, where passwords are not actually stored as they are. If you type the password as 1 2 3 4 5, it would be stored as something else, if you're understanding. Okay, it would be converted into something and it would be stored as 67890, if you're understanding. So this doesn't happen this way, it is not that simple. But if the person tries to go into the database and get the password as 67890, he may not be be able to get into your account, because the password is not actually something which has been seen. It is something which has been converted. If you know what it was, then only you will come to know what the actual password is. Otherwise you cannot get the details from the database and try to understand, because it cannot be recovered. It is one way encryption, if you understand. It cannot be decrypted. The password cannot be created back. So likewise, you don't need to write these things, but you need to be aware that how hackers can try to, like you have various viruses or various attacks of disease which happen in the market. So the doctors try to study them, and then they try to release the medicines which you would be able to. Doctors are basically aware of the diseases or the vulnerabilities which they could produce, or the parts which they could affect. So it is their responsibility to develop an anti-tool basically which can fight against the things which are being introduced into the market. So you will have to be aware of how or what tools these people used, so that you could, as in being aware is important, so that you could develop some controls in order to protect your website or your data from hackers. So one could be something known as hackers. Second is regular software updates, making sure that you update your content, you update your backend, you update your security, like the antiviruses are updated according to the needs or according to the things which are going on in the market. You update the encryption. It shouldn't happen that things which you are using as security measures are something which are outdated, if you're understanding. Using security measures is not an important thing, but using the right measures according to something which shouldn't be easily cracked. That is something which you should use. So in order to make sure that you use that, your content, your software, your website, your data should be updated with the latest version of everything, if you're understanding. Latest version is something which is preferred, which would be helping us to conquer every kind of threat. Okay, latest version of operating system, latest version of the software, latest version of the backups, if you're understanding. So everything should be regularly updated, so that you have everything in an updated mode. Being updated would make you more right than being outdated and trying to preserve your data. So being updated is like, the new things which come have already taken away the bugs or the errors which were there in the previous version. So being updated with the latest version, because you would be able to see whenever you update anything, what changes do you find in the updated version is like the bug fixes, if you're understanding. So making sure that you have everything which is updated version, so that previous errors do not come up, and latest one has already been developed to fight against the errors which were there. So latest one would always be the better one, if you're understanding. So hackers is something which is the point. Regular software updates. Next could be viruses, making sure that you update your check your website daily for viruses. Okay, viruses is something which may corrupt your data basically. So again, you should have tools like antiviruses, anti-malware softwares which could be there in order to fight against the viruses. So viruses is like, again, the disease of the computers which could be there, making sure that you do not get into some content which is creating, like, as a user I shouldn't be tempted with various kinds of advertisement where I click on them and suddenly a virus gets downloaded in my computer. So you should be making sure that the basic hygiene of computer is maintained. So your website, your content should be regularly scanned to check if there are any viruses or not. That is something which is given earlier. So HR asked VP. H would be hacking, R would be regular software updates, V would be viruses, P would be passwords. Now passwords are something which are the most confidential thing, so these should be changed regularly. Okay, regular change should be there. Secondly, if a person leaves the organization, they should become defunctioning, or they should defunct, if you're understanding. It means what? That these passwords shouldn't work. It is a responsibility of the termination team to terminate the passwords as well as soon as an employee leaves. So it is a responsibility to make sure that these credentials do not work at all if the employee leaves the organization, and these passwords, if are there in the organization, are regularly changed by the employees as well. So that the security is maintained, the control is maintained, if you're understanding. So HR, VP, and last is sensitive data. Sensitive data, it means whatever data which is like very confidential, like financial data, etc., it shouldn't be stored as plain text. It could be stored as an encrypted text, if you're understanding. So what is encryption? Scrambling it into something which the intruder, okay, the intrusion who spreads intrusion, basically the intruder is not able to get what the actual content is. He gets something which is encrypted, which is scrambled, which is of no use for him. So you should store your sensitive data in an encrypted format. That is the last control under the last point, if you're understanding. So HR asked VP to give the sensitive data. H stands for hacking, R stands for regular software updates, V stands for something known as viruses, P stands for something known as passwords, and sensitive data is like sensitive data, if you're understanding. So H, hackers, you should be aware of what hackers do, so that you know how hackers hack the thing, so that you are able to apply the appropriate controls, if you're understanding. Okay, R is something regular software, latest version should be there. Okay, newest version of the security software of VPN, etc. things are there, which are, VPN is something which is, again, you would have seen it in your phones. Latest version of VPN should be used. VPN, I'll explain it to you later, but just try to understand it is something which is there for the security purpose, where PN stands for a private network. Private network means what? Something which is just inside the organization. Okay, which is not visible to outsiders. Just try to understand as much as you can. Even if you don't understand, it doesn't matter. But what happens is, suppose you have 10 branches dispersed throughout the country, and still I want the 10 branches to communicate just inside. So I cannot have 10 cables from different cities. Hence I developed something known as VPN. VPN means what? I would be using internet in order to communicate between the 10 branches, but that internet would be a secured internet. Outsiders won't be able to see what is happening. So VPN is something which creates a tunnel among these 10 organizations and secured connection, secure communication. VPN software should be, of the latest version, newest version. Regular software updates could be any software which is there for the security purpose, should be of the newest version. It can be an antivirus as well, if you're understanding. So HR, viruses, passwords. Okay, H was hackers, regular software updates, and last, sensitive data. It should be encrypted. So these are the points which you need to remember in case of controls of e-commerce. So if you are paying attention, in case of controls, the first thing we start from something known as internal control, where we saw the definition, then we saw the 7 entities, then we saw educating the participants about the nature of risk, then we saw the 4 policies which should be communicated, then now we saw that compliance should be maintained according to the industry body standards, like RBI have made it, like the standards which has been released regularly by RBI according to the Information Technology Act, etc. Things should be laid down properly inside your organization according to these standard bodies. Next is like, filing the returns and everything is also being compliant, if you're understanding. Okay, like the XBRL we saw, it is also being compliant, if you're understanding. Like the Ministry of Corporate Affairs wants you to give the report, so you'll have to give the report, if you're understanding. So, and last is something educating, or last is protecting your e-commerce business from intrusion, where 5 points. HR asked VP, you can write gave, asked, doesn't matter, for the sensitive data. H stands for hackers, regular software updates, viruses, passwords, and last was something which is sensitive data, where we are going to use encryption. So before we move ahead towards something which is again related to security, let us try to conclude this by underlining it, so that you are able to make a my summary, and then we would be able to move ahead with on a fresh note, if you're understanding. So why don't you come on to, we have underlined the risks, we will come on to something known as control.